Mhm. Hello, everyone. It's my pleasure to welcome you for our last day of PPM Summer Talks. It's a great honor. It's been a journey. This is actually we're finishing off the 5th week of the PPM Summer Talks. I've got a great speaker here with us today. I might consider him as a friend now. I've been seeing him more than my partner. He's Joe Stoller, everyone. So welcome, Joe. Thank you so much for accepting the invitation.
Thank you, Katie. Glad to be here.
He's been saying this for the past 4 days, so I'm not sure if he's glad to be here 4 days in a row. But it's my honor, and I'll ask Joe some questions. I'll give him space to introduce himself. And yeah, just to quickly sum up what we've been doing for the past 5 weeks here, I've spammed 20 plus speakers to come and join me on this journey 2 months ago, and most of them said yes, and that's why we actually were able to put this all together with very insightful and fruitful keynotes, panel discussions, presentations about what's happening in the pharma industry right now, what are the issues, just putting together a community of professionals, and then attendees like yourself who are here right now today, just so we can all discuss, so I can moderate and you all professionals can discuss about the problems and topics that are within you and they're dwelling within you. So it's my pleasure, and all of this is happening on behalf of WISE Summit through our PPM workout platform. And it's a tool, it's a space for all the pharma professionals to be together at one space to exchange ideas, knowledge, passion, questions, share blog posts. So if you'd like, and if there's anything that you feel like you would want to share, please do so there. There are many people who are happy to help and answer any questions you might have. So that's what we've been doing here, hosting online webinars. And this is our last one, as I said, and we've got Joe Stoller here with his keynote on Gridall. Yes, it does sound like something from Harry Potter. It's a wonderful, wonderful keynote presentation that I was asked to bring back by quite many professionals. So it's my pleasure to have it and hearing it again from Joe today. And he will tell you more about it. I'm not here to actually present that, hopefully. But yeah, I would just like to give a word to Joe, if you'd like to say something about yourself. I know you've been doing it for a few days now, so feel free to add anything funny that you feel like you've been up to lately.
Well, Katie, thank you. Yeah, I don't do funny, but I do project management. So maybe we can jump right into the show. And I appreciate everyone for joining, and thank you, Katie and WISE Summits, for putting on the conference series. It's been such a great group of speakers and topics. And, like you said, now we have this wealth of information in the past 20 sessions that have been recorded and available, all, current and relevant topics. And so now that's all available for users to see. And hopefully this one too, hopefully, Gridall comes into minds of people as they're building up their project information systems. And as an encore, I presented this about a month ago. And as an encore, we now have a new opportunity. A few folks, one is on the line here that we'll ask towards the end of the call, have implemented this with their teams, so we can talk about that approach to implementation and adoption. So it'll be a little bit different than what we did last time, but still a lot of the same content. And so let's go if you're ready.
Yeah, definitely. Hopefully everyone is ready as well. And exactly as Joe mentioned, the session is being recorded like every others. And from what Joe told me yesterday, he said, Katie, please say, like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. So feel free to do so. And after this PPM Summer Talks conference is done and finished, I will upload all of the videos as well to the PPM workout platform. So it's even easier for you to access them. So without further ado, this is Joe Stoller with his Gridall. And welcome and enjoy, everyone.
Thank you, Katie. So first thing here, Gridall, yeah, I call this a comprehensive framework for capturing project information. And we'll talk about why I consider it comprehensive and why it's better than some of the tools that are currently available. And note down here, the icon, Groundswell Pharma Consulting. If you go to the LinkedIn page for Groundswell Pharma Consulting, you'll find a template of all these slides that I'll present today. I'll also be posting the case over the next few days. So these slides can be available and can be found on that website. It's a good starting point for a template. And if you're looking for something like that, you can reach out to me. I can send you the PowerPoint slide or building your own is fairly easy, just a couple of tables. All right, so we'll get into it. Katie gave the introduction, just a few things here. I've been working in PMOs and in project management for the past 10 years. And in particular, I have an interest in setting up systems that capture project information. And so that's what led me into building this concept of Gridall over the past several years, mainly because the tools that were available, we'll get into the next slide here with the objectives, the tools that are available currently, considering ADI logs, RAID logs, grads, things like that, they don't capture the full perspective of a project. And there are deficiencies in the sense that they don't connect the project information across the life cycle. So that's something that has been kind of bothering me, and then led me to start building this concept of Gridall. So I'll describe the advantages of using the Gridall framework to capture project information, and then we'll use this in a case study that's relevant considering the vaccine development that's ongoing. So we'll apply Gridall to the concept of vaccine development, and we'll look at all the components. And then towards the end, this will be the fourth objective. We'll talk about implementation and adoption of Gridall in your organization. So first, by way of introduction, we mentioned ADIs, RAIDs. These are commonly used tools for capturing project information. The problem is these tools leave out some of the key information. They don't capture goals, lessons learned. So they're key aspects of your project that are not contained, and the goals actually drive all of the project information that should be contained in your system. So leaves out a key point. And lessons learned, for me, from an organizational perspective, that's probably the most valuable aspect of project information, because that's how you improve upon the organization and improve upon your processes as you move forward. These tools do not link together project artifacts, meaning goals are not linked to risks, risks are not linked to issues. So the context is often missed. And I think that's really helpful for your project team to understand the context as you're sharing out project information. And in the future, a year from now, when you look back on something that happened, having that context really helps to understand what the situation was. The tools don't allow for a feedback loop for improving future impact. And that comes back to lessons learned, and those lessons learned tying back to future goals, risks, issues, decisions, actions. So having a tool like this, like Gridall, offers a more comprehensive model for capturing project information. It links between project artifacts. It allows a feedback loop. And I think it's a better way, and we'll talk about implementation too. It's easy because all of the tools, we have templates for goals, risks, issues, decisions, actions, lessons learned. None of this is new for your project users. The only thing that's different is the way it's applied. And so hopefully it's an easy adoption and easy implementation with your project. So why is it called Gridall, and why is it set up in this way? Gridall stands for goals, risks, issues, decisions, actions, and lessons learned. Every goal has risks. Every risk can become an issue. Every issue requires a decision. Every decision is followed by an action. Every action affords an opportunity to learn a lesson, and every lesson can be applied back. And that's why it's a life cycle. It's also a framework for project management that we'll look on the next slide, because each of these components has several tools that we can use. We as professional project managers, we have multiple tools to choose from. We'll get to that on the next slide. But that's why, so Gridall, it's a connected framework. It's comprehensive. It's a feedback loop. And I think it captures all the key artifacts of project information to allow someone to reflect back and capture the context, understand the situation, understand what was done next, and follow that piece of that topic or that issue all the way through its life cycle. So here we talked about some of the tools. Within each of these components, there are several tools available, and I've highlighted in bold the ones that capture the project information. But we can look at some of these in a little more detail, just so everyone's familiar. And there are more. This is not a comprehensive list. So with goals, most of us know about SMART goals and OKRs. OKRs are kind of more common in technology, but they're being applied more in other industries like ours. I think it came from Google originally. Cascading goals, that means goals that are captured or goals that are decided at the top and cascaded down through the organization. Commitment goals versus stretch goals, where commitments are ones that are defined and ones that we get measured on, versus stretch, which means if you had more resources, what could you do? Weighted goals with respect to priority. This allows the organization to make trade-off decisions when needed, so that you have a nice prioritized list of your goals, and if resources are needed to be pulled from one project to another, having this goal system allows you to do that. And then we capture goals on a project schedule. And this is kind of an interesting concept. Our goals are really translated into a project schedule and into a timeline, because the end result of the project is measured as a milestone or deliverable somewhere on your project schedule. With risks, several tools here: risk identification systems like FMEA or brainstorming, risk assessments using probability impact matrix. The response plans, I think PMI has 4 of them. Mitigations, contingencies are just a few. I think the 4 are avoid, accept, mitigate, and transfer. And then these risks are captured in a risk register. And the risk register is something we can look at as part of Gridall. With issues, so every risk can become an issue. Issues, you need a mechanism for detecting. So you need to monitor, analyze trends, look at status reports, dashboards to detect these issues. Then you can do an attribution analysis. That's often a root cause analysis, or RCA, and that allows you to look back and see what caused the issue. Issues often require escalation. If you can't decide within your team, you have to escalate up to senior management for a decision, and that decision often changes the direction of your project. Contingency plans. This is what you do in case an issue becomes real. Again, requires you to change your project plan, often requires more money, more resources, and often requires a decision. So these issues are captured on an issue tracker, and that issue tracker then feeds in to the decisions. And so in the next chevron, decisions can be supported by what-if scenarios, by decision trees, Rapid, which I think is a great framework for identifying roles, also DAISY. These 2 tools help to identify the roles in the decision-making process. OODA loops, this is interesting, came from the military. It's intended to support military fighter pilots. So it's observe, orient, decide, act. And then decisions are captured on a decision log. This is important because, in future, a year from now, you come back and look at why was a decision made, who made the decision, what was the context around that decision. So helpful to have that documented. Then actions. Every decision requires an action. That could be a change in course, could be revised documentation, it could be updating SOPs, lots of things that result from decisions. But they can be as part of an action plan, like a CAPA. Actions, again, we talked about roles like Rapid and DAISY. So a RACI diagram helps to capture the responsibilities of an action. An action item tracker or Kanban or to-do list. These are all ways of documenting the actions. And then finally, lessons learned. Every action affords an opportunity to learn a lesson. 2 ways of doing lessons learned: continuous improvement or postmortem. And there's benefits of each. Continuous improvement, I see most commonly and most effective with short turnaround activities, things that you do often over a short period of time. Whereas postmortems, that's often better when you have a long project and want to reflect back over the entire thing, like an entire clinical study. It might take 2.5 years. So better to do a postmortem at the end of a clinical trial. SSOR. So this is a mechanism that we'll look at when we get down to those slides, but it's a mechanism for capturing lessons learned that I think is really useful. And then we capture and disseminate these lessons learned either in a library or in a knowledge base. And we'll talk about the pros and cons of those when we get down to it. But just briefly, a library is one place that you can go to capture or to view all of the lessons learned. A knowledge base is more of a written narrative of the lesson learned that also links to other lessons. And so it turns into more of like a wiki platform that new users can go to gain knowledge. So again, lots of tools, and that's why Gridall can be considered as a project management framework as well as a lifecycle tool. All right, so we can get into it. We'll start with goals. And again, each of these template slides are available on the Groundswell LinkedIn page. So this is a template that I really like for goal setting. And I'll walk through some of the highlights here. You know, of course, you want to have a goal title and a very clear deliverable. The delivery date clearly outlined. The definition of stretch. So if you were given more resources, what upside could be achieved? This could be either bringing in that date, getting more of whatever the deliverable is, a higher quality. So if you applied more resources or if you had more money, what could you do better? You want to have a goal owner, someone who is able to act on, monitor the progress of the goal, and flag issues when things are going off track, flag issues back to your project team so your project team can take action. Strategic alignment, this relates back to cascading goals. What was the higher level corporate goal that this project goal fits into? Then assumptions. This is really important for goals, I think, that the assumptions that your team has when setting up the goal may or may not become real. And over time, as they become real or not, you might need to change the goals of your project or change the direction of your project. So it's good to capture these goals in one place so that when you're deciding on the goals and deciding on the prioritization of your goals, your leadership can understand kind of how risky it is. Again, risks and voiding criteria. If something goes wrong with the assumptions that you made, you might need to change your goal or even abandon your goal. So the voiding criteria, what circumstances would cause the team to redefine the goal? So I like this framework when capturing a goal and sharing it with senior management, getting agreement. And then when you have your list of goals, your goal set, you basically just capture the title, deliverable, and delivery date. And you have this in kind of the backup for more context if needed. So every goal has its risks. Here's a pretty common risk register. The headings you see here, I like to simplify it. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 columns and an impact matrix or a risk matrix down at the bottom right. That's commonly used. You know, I like to keep it simple, low, medium, high, and have a scoring system, 1, 2, 3. And anything in red, you need to identify a response. Anything in yellow, plan something, but no action needed at that point. And anything in green is a monitor situation. So a very simple way of applying the risk impact and probability into an actionable format. The risk description here, so if an event occurs, then there will be an impact resulting in effect on the goal. And again, tying this back to the goals, that's the key thing with Gridall, is tying it back. All right, so I'll move past this one. I think risk registers, everyone should have, and that's another point here, everyone should have a risk register with their project already. So none of this is new. It's just a matter of tying it back and then relating an issue back to the risk. So this might be a new kind of format that some folks haven't seen. Every risk can become an issue. This is an issue context slide that I like to use with my project teams. The columns here or the rows here, background, what was the goal that the issue was related to? What decisions were made previously that might have led to this issue? What assumptions were made? I think that's another good one to capture. What assumptions were made that may not have become real, and now that leads to an issue that needs to be acted upon. The issue, I often spend a lot of time with my project teams on identifying what is the concern, what is the threat to the goal. They might come with a functional perspective, but there might be a broader context that's threatening the goal. And so that's kind of the crux of this slide, is what is the issue, really defining what is the issue. Then a recommendation, I like to have my sub-teams or even my core team provide a recommendation on a path forward and take that to senior leadership for a decision. Discussion points, when you're bringing this to your core team and you say, you know, we have this issue, we need to work up a plan. I recommend we take 2 weeks and think about it, talk to some external advisors, talk to some internal folks, and then ask your core team, what assumptions were made to support the recommendation? What questions does the team need information on in order to make the decision? Because this helps to make the decision-making process go faster. And eventually, the next steps will be, we need a decision, we need some endorsement. So what is the decision path that we need to follow in order to move this forward? And on the right side, do you remember RAPID? That was the decision-making roles, role definition framework that I mentioned before. This was actually brought up by Bain and Company around 2010. So it's you know, a fairly recent tool, but I find it really useful in defining the roles. So recommend, agree, input, decide, perform. And when you assign the people or the group responsible for each of these, there's less swirl at the end when a decision is made, because you're kind of capturing all the relevant stakeholders up front and getting agreement that these are the relevant stakeholders before the decision is made. And once the decision is made, no one can say, well, oh, you didn't include so-and-so, so your decision doesn't work. So having that up front with your issue slide really helps to speed up the decision-making process by avoiding swirl at the end. Okay, so every issue requires a decision. And here's a nice decision log that I find helpful. First column, again, tying it back to the decision. What was the problem that needed to be solved? And then the decision, that's the commitment. A decision is a commitment that the organization is making. That could be applying more resources. It could be changing the goal. It could be applying additional money or applying a contingency plan. So what was the decision? What commitment is being made? Why was that choice made among all the alternatives? So describing the rationale, this really helps to get the people who need to take action on board with what the decision is and what the actions are. So describing that rationale really helps to set the context and motivate people to take action on the decision. And then next steps, these are your actions. What are the downstream activities that are needed to execute the decision? So these tie into the next slide that we'll look at. What are the actions that need to be taken? Then 2 more kind of metadata here, the decision maker and the decision date. This gives time relevance and allows future people to come back and ask the decision maker about the context if there are any questions that come up. So it puts a person to the decision. Okay, next step, every decision is followed by an action. Here's a nice, very simple action item tracker. Context, the action, a responsible person, a due date, and then check-in timing. So with context, that relates back to the issue, the decision, what was the rationale for the decision, the action. This is a clear definition of who, what, when, and how, with the what being, what is the deliverable that's expected. And this needs to be very clear in your action item tracker. The responsible person, I like to have one person, not a group. Even if it's a sub-team, like your clinical sub-team, put the responsible person as the sub-team lead. That way you have an accountable person to track the progress of the action and flag back any issues, but there's a clear accountability. And then a delivery date, always important. This can be, if it's so far in the future, you don't know an actual day, put it in a quarter, put it in a month, but have a due date. And then check-in timing. This is the date that you want a a report back to your core team, for example, to check in on timing. If things are moving along nicely, just a quick update, things are moving along, or if things are hung up somewhere, you can use your core team and use the decision-making authority at your core team to unstick things if needed. So again, I bet every one of you has an action item tracker with your project already. So none of this is new. It's just putting it in context and then taking that to the next step. Every action affords an opportunity to learn a lesson. This is the SSOR format that I like: situation, solution, outcome, and recommendation. The situation, this is a narrative description of what was the situation, what was the goal you're trying to achieve. Was the situation recognized as a risk? How did the risk become an issue? The solution, what measures, decisions, actions were put in place to address the issue? The outcome, how well did it resolve the issue? To what extent did the solution meet the project's goal? If it fell short of the goal, why? What could have been done differently? And the recommendation, would you enact the same solution next time? So this allows people who are viewing a risk register in this format to quickly search through, kind of scan through, or use a search mechanism to search for things that are related to their current situation and understand the situation they were in. Does it apply to what they're facing now? What solution was applied? And did it work? Would they do it again? So very simple format, but useful, I think. And again, it ties back to the actions and to the decisions. So that's it. That's all the steps. And now I thought we'd walk through a case study and apply the concepts of Gridall, each of the artifacts of Gridall, to a current situation. And the current situation, so we're in this COVID situation, and clinical trials are ongoing or starting up soon. And this article, I thought, really described well some of the challenges and lessons learned from previous COVID trials that need to be considered as we're moving forward. And especially, the news now about Pfizer being fully approved, no more EUA, it's now a fully approved drug here in the US. That will probably change the landscape for clinical trial development. Where previously a lot of placebo-controlled trials were allowed, that might not be allowed anymore. So this is becoming more relevant over time. So here, let's apply the goal. Let me do a quick check on time. Okay, 7:30, we're doing good. We'll apply this goal framework, and we'll define the goal title as initiate a pivotal study in COVID-19 by the end of the year. The deliverable, this is very specific. So first patient in. This means in our context, first patient dosed. There's often confusion about first patient screened, first patient enrolled, first patient dosed. In this situation, we want to have a very clear definition: first patient dosed. Delivery date, November 2021. Sure, we'll just, for this example, we'll just pick a date. Stretch goal, so if we applied a study startup unit, which requires more money, we can apply, we can bring in an FSP model. Then we think we can bring in the delivery date by a month. And this is important for senior leadership to understand. If they think this is valuable enough to bring in an FSP model to buy us that 1 month, then they can make that decision. So the owner, clinical sub-team, or study management team, I like to have a real owner here, a single person. So this would be the clinical sub-team lead or the study lead. The strategic alignment, again, this is the high-level corporate goal that then cascades down to this project goal. So if there were a corporate goal about broadening the portfolio into new virology therapeutic areas, this goal would fit under that umbrella. Assumptions, okay, so let's assume that health authorities have no issue with the current study design, especially the placebo control, to enable EUA or for full market application. Okay, so that's an assumption that we're making, and as I mentioned before, that's probably at risk. So the risk that we identify here, COVID-19 epidemiology and therapeutic paradigms are changing rapidly and unpredictably. There's new variants, there's mass vaccination programs. There's asymmetric rollout of vaccination programs across countries. So all of these are kind of undefined and unprecedented things that are hard to anticipate. So they bring risk to our project, especially being able to start up a new study in this paradigm. Voiding criteria: if major health authorities reject the placebo-controlled design, then a new program may need to be evaluated. Okay, so we'll talk through that as we go through. The risks, and I'm picking just the one risk here to illustrate the point. If the FDA rejects a placebo-controlled design, other major health authorities are likely to have similar concerns, and startup activities will be delayed, if not, avoiding criteria overall. But at the least, startup activities will be delayed, and our FPI will be at risk. Impact 3, this is a high. Probability 3, this is a high. So this puts us in kind of this high exposure category where we need to have a response ready. So the response at this time, accept. So we accept the risk with the contingency to evaluate a head-to-head design in the future. Our owner, this is a clinical subteam lead, and this is the person who tracks to and flags the risk as it becomes an issue. And the trigger date, let's say, FDA feedback is expected in September. Sure, let's use that as the point at which we reevaluate this risk. Okay, moving along, the issue slide that we talked about. Okay, so now we're in a new situation. We got feedback from the FDA, and we'll walk through that here. Okay, so we were trying to get to the background. We were trying to get to FPI by the end of the year. We decided to employ a placebo-controlled design because it's the most operationally feasible. It requires the fewest patients in order to demonstrate efficacy. The issue, now we got FDA feedback. FDA has rejected the placebo-controlled design, and it's likely we'll get similar feedback from other health authorities. Okay, the recommendation now, we want to evaluate other designs, either head-to-head design against approved therapy, or maybe a synthetic control arm, something that would enable us to get an efficacy result outside of the placebo-controlled study design. We're still waiting for feedback from other regions. So, we're just kind of getting ahead of this, considering that other health authorities might have similar feedback. If we do get rejections from other health authorities, then we might have to employ this contingency. Okay, so discussion points. We want to know, is a head-to-head study operationally feasible? Is it within a sample size that we think we can conduct? Are there available approved therapies globally that we can conduct a head-to-head? Are there unmet medical needs, other unmet medical needs that we can focus on? So we've been hearing a lot about booster injections. And so do we want to shift from being the primary vaccination to instead being a booster and boosting the available therapies instead of just focusing on our own? Is an emerging market approach commercially viable? Meaning, if health authorities from major markets are not going to accept this design, could we look at some of the emerging markets and that are still have this as an unmet medical need and run our clinical trial there in a placebo-controlled design? Okay, so next steps. In 2 weeks, we'll come back to the core team with new design and recommendations. Then we'll go to the portfolio committee with a recommendation on a path forward. And you see the rapid on the right. So the CST lead is coming with a recommendation. We need agreement from the department line, that's the CMO. We're getting input from clinical operations, biostats, commercial, clinical, and we'll check in with all of them before we come back with a recommendation to the core team. The D sits with the core team. So the core team lead will have the decision here. And then, in the future, probably the portfolio committee will have the actual decision. And then perform, this will be at the CST and study management team level. They're the ones who will be taking action on it when the decision is made. Okay, so here's our decision log. And again, this captures, when we come back to the core team and a decision is made, we want to capture that for reference. So describing the issue, the FDA rejected the placebo-controlled design, and it's likely that we'll get similar feedback from other health authorities. All right, hypothetically, we made a decision to proceed with a placebo-controlled design and look for regions that do not yet have approved therapies, for example, emerging markets. Okay, so when we did our homework, we found that the head-to-head design was operationally infeasible. It was a massive study design. Say, it required 100,000 people to demonstrate efficacy against the approved therapies. So we thought, we can do that. We're too small of a company to do that. So we're going to pursue a different approach, which is go to regions that still have unmet medical need and will still allow for a placebo-controlled design in their countries. Next steps, adjust the operational considerations to include regions that do not have approved therapies. Our current plan was to go to major markets. Now we need to switch and find countries that will still allow this placebo-controlled design. Decision maker, that's a project team lead at the core team. And we made the decision September 30th. Okay, just some metadata there. All right, the actions. Okay, so again, relating back to the decision that was made in the context. The decision was made to proceed with a placebo-controlled design and look for regions that do not have approved therapies, for example, in emerging markets. The action now is to update the operational plan. And the deliverable, this is a new operational plan. So this is what regions will we go to? What is the enrollment rate? All that, the operational plan that goes into the study management. Basically rebuilding the operational plan is the action. The SMT lead is responsible for that. It'll take about a month to do. Let's check in 2 weeks and see if everything's on track. Okay, very simple. The lessons learned. So this is using that SSOR format, and I'll spend a few minutes here. This kind of captures the entire life cycle. So it's very narrative, a lot of words here, but I'll read through it. I think it really captures the entire kind of life cycle of this issue as it moved from a goal to an issue, through a decision, and through actions. So I want to read through and just capture it here. So in the situation, we sought to enroll first patient in a pivotal trial in a rapidly changing competitive and regulatory environment. And we realized the risk that regulators might not accept a placebo-controlled design. When we received feedback from the FDA that they rejected the placebo design, we recognized that it would likely be a broader issue that would affect enrollment. The solution, after considering several additional designs, including running the study as a head-to-head trial, we decided to stick with a placebo-controlled design and instead of enrolling in major markets, we would enroll in emerging markets. The outcome, let's enroll in these the outcome. So after we have conducted the study, we're coming back to this. Enrollment in major markets was slower than the original plan that we used for major markets, but it still met the overall intent to demonstrate efficacy in a pivotal trial. And it enabled commercialization in those regions that did not require a massive sample size for a head-to-head trial. So the recommendation, the team feels it was the right decision and the right action to take to switch the operational plan. And the change in course has gone to plan so far, but commercialization success will not be available for another year or so. So we can report back when the commercial value realization information is available. Okay, so that's an example of how this can be used. I have one more slide here, and then I'll recap and we'll take some questions, some open Q&A. Okay, so this concept of Gridall, again, none of the components are unique. The goal tracker, the risk register, the issue tracker, decision log, all of that are things that are well known through our standard project management practices. It's just a matter of how it's organized. And so the implementation and adoption I've found has been fairly easy. Let's talk about some of the tools that you can do to build this. For sure, Excel is probably, or a spreadsheet type tool is probably the easiest way to start. And in Excel, you can have one tab per component and then copy and paste information over. It becomes unwieldy, it becomes unscalable as your project grows, and if you have a rather large project, it becomes, you're kind of feeding the beast if you're keeping your grid all up to date. So Excel is not very scalable, but it's definitely the easiest way to start. Microsoft Lists, this is kind of a new tool, but it's cloud-based, and it has a little bit more security around it and allows for better kind of filtering and views, and has some color coding that's associated with it, some conditional formatting. So List is kind of that next step in becoming more scalable. It does require a little bit more work to build it. It's not as simple as Excel. And then Power Apps. This is probably, the best tool for this kind of thing. It does require some knowledge of how to build a Power App. And even though it's low code, no code, it does require some training on how to build a Power App. But it is probably the best because it can automate a lot of the information flow. So say when you create your list of goals, and then you go into the risk profile, you can just select which goal it relates to, and all of that information pulls over automatically. My recommendation is one Gridall per project, and this is because each project has its own goals defined, and the Gridall concept begins with goals. So one Gridall per project. Things to consider: start simple, build up over time, plan for the future. Know that there might be information that's sensitive to your project or to your project team. Understand what reporting you want to get out of this tool. Integration with other tools. Say, for example, you have a project scheduling tool, or you have a Gantt chart reporting tool that you want to pull this information into. Consider that as you're building your Gridall. And we'll get feedback from Estelle in a few minutes on how the adoption has been going with her team in just a minute. Let me just recap with the summary here. So again, goals, risks, issues, decisions, actions, lessons learned. I feel like the Gridall is a more comprehensive framework. It captures all of the relevant project information. The context is captured, and the components are linked to each other. So I feel like it's a better way of capturing project information. All right, so I'll pause there. I'm going to check if there are any questions.
Yeah, so thank you, Joe. You were kind of like jumping in straight, but thank you so much. This is really wonderful, and I'm hoping that people will unmute themselves if they want to. There is a question from Peter. I'm not sure if he wants to pop in or if the kids are running around. I might just ask, one Gridall means only one goal to be documented per project. At what stage after the project? At what stage? It was one question after the project, another. So what would you say?
Yeah, Peter, thanks for the question. And I like to have several goals per project. So within Gridall, you can have multiple goals. The example that I gave up above is for one goal, but you would pull that example into one kind of goals list. And at the core team level, about 8 or 10 goals usually feels right. So you can have all of those 8 or 10 goals in your goal list. And then in your risk register, you would relate back to either a goal number, or you can pull over the goal title and have that in your risk register so the context is maintained. And then to the second question, Katie, could you repeat that? Or Peter, if you want to jump in.
Of course. At what stage after the project? Maybe after the project? Goal to be documented per project at what stage and after the project, or whether it's after the project. Sorry, it is loud here. Peter says it's louder so he can.
Okay, no worries. Okay, so I'm not sure if I understand the second part.
During or after project, or if the Gridall maybe can be applied whether during or after project. So I'll just read it out loud. Yeah, maybe that's.
Yeah, so Gridall for sure during the project, even before you start the project, when you start defining your goals, you can start building your Gridall. And then as you move through the project, you're capturing the risks, the issues, the decisions in real time. So yeah, throughout your project duration, you're maintaining the Gridall. And this might be a good point where Estelle and I kind of talk about the implementation and how, setting up the Gridall, adding the initial information, and then tracking that through the life cycle. So Estelle, are you free to jump in?
Yeah,
Yes,
feel free to jump in. Hello, hi.
hi, thank you. Hi, Katie. Hi, Joe, thanks for allowing me to join. Yeah, so what I will say, I reached out to Joe after I saw his presentation because I'm a RAID user, and what I was looking for was a tool such as the Gridall to really be able to connect the pieces. I support non-clinical development, and so our function is really to make sure all our therapeutics are safe for first in patient dosing. And so that requires a lot of input from cross-functional teams. And I started the implementation. I started off simple. I started with using Excel, and I went back to the team goals. The team had already decided what their goals were, but because this was a newly formed team and I was a new PM for this team, I thought this would be a useful tool to start the process. And I presented it to the team. I looked at several of the goals and applied the different areas of the Gridall, and I presented it to my team. And they were really excited about it. And I think one part of the excitement was the ability to be able to really connect the dots, especially when you work in non-clinical, being able to see, okay, we want to start this, what we say, a tox study at this time. And things for non-clinical, there's usually something that always occurs with the study. So, an issue may come up, what's that risk for us completing that study and being able to provide this data so we can possibly go to the FDA with our IND submission. So really be able to track those things. And one other positive thing about the grid, I was really be able to see as you go through this process, the lessons learned. And then talking with some of my team members, for example, one of our therapeutic areas we're looking at is CNS. So I'm supporting multiple programs, but being able to see across that and those lessons learned and be able to apply that is really important. So that's where a lot of the excitement came as well. And again, being able to connect those dots. And what I found useful as far as implementation, actually reaching out to individual stakeholders and getting their input as well was very helpful. And actually tomorrow I'm going to present some of the issues and risks as they relate to our goals and get additional feedback from the team. So I don't know if that, Joe, answers your question or not.
Very good. Yeah, I love it. And so your team was receptive to trying this tool out. And when you presented it for the first time, did you show the Excel spreadsheet or did you show some of the slides that kind of conceptually introduces them to the Gridall?
I did the Excel sheet, but I also I took your your picture of the Gridall and how everything connects and start off with that to kind of give them a why I thought this was important. And then I had the different Excel sheets with the goals, the risks, the issues, decisions, actions, and lessons learned, and I had information on each sheet. I thought that was the easiest way because I work with quite a bit of number of scientists, so I thought it'd be easier, just to do a more simple form and really get their engagement.
And Estelle, that's exactly the approach that I took too when I introduced my teams to it a little over a year ago. Yeah, so it showed kind of the high level. This is why we want to go with the Gridall format. People were familiar with RAIDs and ADIs, and so I showed them the benefit of Gridall over some of those tools at kind of conceptual level, and then introduced them to the spreadsheet. And so did exactly the same thing, and it was well received as well. So hopefully that helps some of the other users, people who are interested in building this up with their project teams. Again, these slides are available on the LinkedIn page for Groundswell, and you can.
There's actually a question. There's actually a question from Aisha. Hi, thank you. I may have missed it, but where can I find these slides or more guidance on Gridall? So please.
Yeah, so on LinkedIn, I have a company page for Groundswell Pharma Consulting, and there's an image of these slides available on there. If you want the PowerPoint, reach out to me on LinkedIn and I can send you the PowerPoint.
Do you think we could share the PowerPoint at the PPM, or is it too?
Yes. Yeah, I think we can. Yeah, I think we can. I have no hesitation about that.
Thank you. Yeah, feel free to send it to me, and then I'll be able to upload it so that everyone can actually find it and see it there as well.
Cool. Yeah, just on a side note, this is so I've asked the Patent Trade Office to trademark Gridall, just in case sometime in the future there might be a business enterprise here. But the tools are all available. Like none of these tools are unique, just the way it's kind of laid out, the way it's organized. So I have no hesitation sharing the templates here. It's all something that's available to us as project managers.
Thank you. And hopefully an app will follow, because we live in an app age.
I hope one day, if there's anyone out there who is savvy with Power Apps, you know, we can create an app, a full Gridall app, and post it on GitHub. And so people can just download it and have it ready to use in their environment. That would be ideal. And, you know, we're kind of building that internally right now. So if that becomes available in the next couple months, I look forward to posting it up there and making it available to all project managers.
Yeah, if there's anyone who would love to help Joe out, or just to really get in touch with him, please do so. He's on LinkedIn. He's part of a PPM workout platform as a member. So yeah, he's available, and he's a happy and kind person to talk to. So do reach out to him. There is a question from Peter. Do you have any platform in mind that you recommend for later knowledge sharing, or you just share PowerPoint on something like SharePoint? I smell business behind this.
Yeah, so if this is relating to the Gridall, I started it in, if I'm understanding the question correctly, I started it in Excel, moved it into lists. So that has a SharePoint backend. And then the next step will be Power Apps. And that's the part that we're building out now. It's taking more time than I expected because it's a totally new platform for me. But that would be the ideal. Once it's in Power Apps, I would love to create a template out of it and share that out with everyone. The backend on that, so the platform on that is Dataverse, which has so much flexibility. You could pull it into all kinds of reports, into Power BI, into into PowerPoint, all kinds of things. So once it's housed in the Dataverse, there's a lot of flexibility.
Yeah, thank you, Joe, and thank you, Peter, for the question. Yeah, is there anyone else who would like to add anything to it? Or he says thank you. Yeah, if feel free to. This is the last session of PPM Summer Talk, so if you've got any feedback when it comes to Gridall or to PPM Summer Talks, please feel free to unmute yourself and tell us, share, and if you're shy, then do so on the platform. Estelle says, thanks, Joe, looking forward to the Power App. I smell a lot of business here.
Well, yeah, Katie, thank you. I just want to say, the past month has been fantastic. So many great topics and so many great presenters. And I want to thank Y Summits and you especially for organizing and bringing people together and creating the platform that we can continue to share information and best practices. This is really, something I've been looking for as a project manager in the pharmaceutical industry. There's lots of platforms for project managers. There's lots of platforms for the pharmaceutical industry, but not one that combines PM in pharma. So I'm really looking forward to learning from folks and sharing information on that platform.
Thank you so much, Joe. And exactly as you're saying, if others don't know still, please, any life that you want to create there with blog posts or opinions or anything that you want to share, please feel free to do so, especially because we're actually not doing any other online webinars in the upcoming few weeks. Feel free to start creating life there. We will have exciting people who will add value of some content to the platform, but you can do so as well. It's free. It's like we don't charge anything for that. So anything you've got going on, please do so and feel free to post it there, exactly as you do on Instagram or Facebook. Please do so at the PPM Workout platform as well. And yeah, I'm not going to keep anyone any longer. This was the biggest pleasure to host professionals and experts from the pharma industry like Joe, and everyone else, also the attendees like yourself who have been coming and joining us. It was a beautiful ride of 5 weeks. I need a rest, but I'm not sure what I'm going to do next Tuesday at 4 p.m. Central European time, because I won't be hosting an online webinar. So I will think of you all. And this was really wonderful. The recordings can be found at the on our YouTube channel, Y Summit. So subscribe, like, and share. And I will be seeing you very soon with some exciting things that will be happening. And feel free to reach out to me or anyone else who was, who is part of our PPM Workout platform as a member. It's really easy. Chat, create connections, anything you've got going on. People say thank you, Joe, and thank you, Katie. Thank you, everyone. This was it was incredible, and I'm so looking forward to our next projects that are in the making right now. So keep your eyes peeled, and this virtual space is gonna be great. So thank you so much, everyone. It was the biggest pleasure, and have the most beautiful rest of your day. It's a Friday, so go on and rest during the weekend. Thank you so much, everyone, again. And thank you, Joe, for accepting the invite again. It was gorgeous. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Bye-bye.